Hi, this is Mike from Printwear, and I'm here today with Rene Rosales from TexMac. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you very much, Mike.
So why is it important for a shop to offer headwear decoration as part of their embroidery services?
Well, I'll tell you something. Having trained for well over a decade, a lot of new embroiderers, at least from that standpoint, and even customers asking about new embroidery machines, that's 90% of the time they'll ask us, can this machine sew caps? So we know it's very pervasive even when they're trying to think about bringing on the capability. But even when we talk to people who are doing embroidery, if they don't have the capability at some point, I would peg the figure consistently at about 90%. They all pretty much want to bring on the ability to do caps at some point, whether it's at full time or even a small part of their order. It's very important.
How does a shop determine when it's time to add more heads to their production line?
Well, there are a couple of factors there, and one of the first things I'll say as a trainer for TexMac and Happy Embroidery Machines is that, in training machines, is that I would advise a shop to, first of all, get to a point where you're comfortable operating one machine, and once you're comfortable with the operation, basic maintenance, then you want to think about the nice positive thing about operating a second machine is it doesn't take any more labor to operate that second machine. So once you're comfortable operating it, it's easy to scale up from that end. But of course, the big thing, the obvious answer you're looking at is your order volume. I would say think about the total amount of time that you're spending out of your day that you're open to do embroidery, you're actually operating. Are you feeling that all sewing, and whether you're a part-time or full-time, if you're filling that time and finding you have a lot of extra volume that you need to take care of, that's going to start to become obvious. And if you want to be a little conservative about it, look at maybe your last 90 to 180 days of invoiceables and see if your order volume is consistent enough to support it. But once you're confident that you can do that, you're cutting out your production time by half or even more by adding a second, third machine without adding labor costs. So it can be a win-win once you determine that order volume is right there.
So it's basically an investment without necessarily adding a ton of overhead.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. With a good operator, absolutely.
How do some of these stylized and commercial patches factor into current trends in the embroidery market?
Well, first of all, I'm going to qualify my answer by saying that as a trainer, I don't see a lot of things on the fashion forward front. So I see a lot of people that are learning on the conservative side, so they're just trying to learn the basics. But that being said, patches are a very steady part of the requests that I get as the number of techniques they want to learn, along with ball caps, basic shirts, garments, and everything. There's always a request for patches. So that's a regular thing, whether it's going to be doing traditional items like military or workwear, and doing ID and badges and patches for things like that. I see among some of our younger operators, or actually just people who've been in business for a while, I see trickling in from pop culture things, requests that really kind of spice it up a little bit. I hear somebody came up to me and said, I saw this patch that says hotter than sriracha, for example,
Sure.
or people that are putting emojis on their patches, for example.
So how can a shop tap into some of the retail-inspired apparel looks with embroidery decoration?
Well, to answer that question again, I'll qualify my remark by saying I'm more of a trainer teaching people how to operate embroidery machines, but having done it over 15 years and teaching, I can definitely say with certainty that there's at least a medium and long-term trend of including embroidery directly on garments, both on the retail side where it wasn't before. And as a result, I do get a lot of customers who will come in that are asking to learn how to incorporate techniques such as, for example, lace accents onto a wedding dress, or some kind of just embroidered detail that they can either applique down onto some of their retail offerings. And I definitely see that more than I have seen in past years. So it's important that embroiderers can be able to tap into that because it is there and it is trending up.
So what are some strategies that a shop can employ to keep up with holiday volume, both in the production standpoint and also just overall business management?
That question is kind of my cup of tea, so I'm glad you asked that, is that a lot of that's preparedness, and when I talk to people, especially now in the end of October, a lot of our embroiderers are really starting to get into it for the holiday volume, or at least prepping ahead of time. And first on the apparel side of it, one thing I tell them, my customers, is that look at your supply first of all. A lot of my customers have a favorite supplier that's really a go-to, but because Holiday Rush can run a lot of suppliers out of a favorite line, it's good to have a backup. And since a lot of suppliers will carry the same thing, it's good to have that redundancy. It's really going to save them to have that done ahead of time.
Okay.
Now, in-house on the operational side, embroidery machine operators, number one, I would say make sure you're trained up, you're confident with your ability. Nobody's ever, of course, 100% confident.
Right.
There's always more training. But at least don't go into a situation new, or at least without a little practice, basic operation. And then also when you're making your offerings, I would say to business owners, is don't try to avoid some completely new technique that you or your operators aren't familiar with.
Sure.
Stick with what you're good at, because when the order volume goes up, the pressure goes up, the mistakes can come up, and things that you're more comfortable with and that you know you can produce, those are going to be your winners as far as profitability and volume.
Sure.
So that's what I've seen, and
you avoid less risk for error. And
absolutely.
Well, thanks a lot for being here today.
Thanks for having me.